Որն է այդ մեծ խաղը։
So what is that big game? Armen Grigoryan, the secretary of the Security Council of Armenia, has recently met with the president of Iran and other Iranian officials. Meanwhile, a delegation from Azerbaijan is also in Tehran for negotiations. During these meetings, the Iranian side has expressed concerns about the geopolitical situation around the so-called Zangezur Corridor and repeatedly stated that the borders should remain unchanged, emphasizing that any changes of the borders would involve other geopolitical players in the region, which would lead to instability. I would like to emphasize that the issue is not only about the Zangezur Corridor. It is just a valid reason for Iran to speak up about all the threats coming from Azerbaijan. Considering the amount of weaponry that was left in Artsakh after the recent expulsion of Armenians, it is easy to imagine what would happen if Azerbaijan started a war against Iran and also managed to incite an uprising in the North Iranian region populated by Azerbaijanis. This could lead to the involvement of several countries, including Afghanistan, Pakistan, Israel, and Turkey, which would escalate the situation into a full-scale regional war.
Իսրայելը միանալ, Թուրքիան միանալ, այսինքն բավականին լուրջ ռազմական
It appears that Iran is well aware of the impending provocation that is looming against them, considering that Russia not only endorsed but also participated in expelling the Armenians from Artsakh. Those Armenians who could have impeded the attack on Iran from the north, thus besieging a vast number of Azerbaijani and Turkish forces.
Բավական մեծ ադրբեջանական, թուրքական ուժեր։ Ուրեմն այդ գործողությունը անելով Ռուսաստանը
Thus, through the expulsion of Armenians from Artsakh, Russia is intending to instigate a second major war in the region in order to divert the attention of the international community from the war in Ukraine with the hope that Ukraine would not turn into Russia's graveyard.
Ռուսաստանի փշրվում են իր ատամները։ Իրանը այս բոլորը գիտակցելով քայլեր է ձեռնարկում, այլ քայլեր է ձեռնարկել, ես ուզում եմ
Iran understands this and has taken a number of steps to prevent a war against it. On September 23, following the aggression of Azerbaijan on Artsakh on September 19, President of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, announced during his speech at the UN General Assembly that Iran, for the first time in 40 years, is prepared to provide UN peacekeeping forces. UN General Secretary Guterres immediately responded positively to the offer, which indicates that there was a prior agreement during secret negotiations between Iran and the West, since such public statements are made only after a mutual agreement in order not to embarrass one party if the other party intends to refuse the offer. Even though Raisi did not state where Iran intends to provide UN peacekeepers, but it is obvious that Iran's interest is in our region, and this offer is seen as a compromise solution and a positive step towards resolving conflicts in the region.
ՄԱԿ-ի մանդատով իրանական զորքերը մասնակցեն տարածաշրջանում խաղաղության
Armenia is in a critical period at this time, and it is imperative for it to gain time in order to restore its military and political balance.
Շահի իր ռազմաքաղաքական հավասարակշռությունը վերականգնելու համար այս վիճակը մեր համար ժամանակ շահելը շատ կարևոր է եւ ուստի
Iran has made an important move, which, coupled with other factors in the equation that influences Azerbaijan's decision-making, has put Aliyev in a tough spot. The West has found common ground with Iran, as evidenced by the unfreezing of $6 billion in Iranian accounts, lifting of certain sanctions on oil transactions, and reopening of the railroad to the Mediterranean Sea, which goes through Iraq and was closed for 40 years.
Դա սկսվել է դեռևս ֆինանսական հաշիվները բացելու Իրանի մոտարապես 6 միլիարդ դոլարի.
These public acts suggest that the relations between Iran, the United States, and the West in general have been improving, which did not go unnoticed by Azerbaijan. As you know, the primary confrontation in the world is between the United States and China, where Iran has a pivotal role and its positioning in international matters is of great importance. In its desire to bypass U.S. supremacy over the oceans and the seas, China is interested in developing 3 land routes to Europe. One of them is through Russia, which is not a viable option anymore because of the war in Ukraine. The other 2 go through the Caucasus and Iran, respectively. The Chinese project, called the Middle Corridor, which goes through Central Asia, the Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, and through Zangezur Corridor onto Turkey, is well known. The third southernmost route passes through Iran, making it a key player in the international Eurasian game board. There is a fierce competition between Azerbaijan and Iran over who would control and govern these routes and which country will align with which camp. It seems that a deadly conflict has begun, because as you might have noticed, the 5 leaders of the Central Asian countries first met with Biden and then with Scholz. As you know, the 3rd largest gas deposits in the world belongs to Turkmenistan. 40% of the uranium mines are located in Kazakhstan, so on and so on. All these resources must be funneled to the West without China's control or influence. There are only 2 possible ways to achieve this, either through Azerbaijan or through Iran. Our pain and suffering has blurred our vision, thus making us unable to see the bigger picture of intense competition that exists today on the world scene. It is important to understand that the miseries and tragedies that we experienced are a direct result of world politics. Therefore, we must gather the strength to carefully analyze every move being made on the big board game to determine our next steps, taking into consideration as to what is under our control and what is not. It is no secret that Azerbaijan has better preparation for this game, with Netanyahu's Israel and Erdogan's Turkey, providing them with valuable support and guidance. Azerbaijan's success in this big game can be attributed to its excellent advisors and the support it receives from its allies. Over the past 3 decades, because of our provincial methods of governing and lack of strategic planning, we have become mere pawns in the hands of Russia and the Turkish world. We are well aware of the West's capabilities and should be mindful of the significant developments that are about to occur there. The United States is preparing for its presidential elections, which starts a year before, where the focus is mostly on internal political issues. Azerbaijan, with its connections to Israel and Turkey, is even trying to influence on U.S. domestic affairs, exerting pressure in multiple ways. For instance, based on the euphoria that Azeris experience these days because of the bribery case against Menendez, a prominent figure of the Democratic Party, it is not difficult to ascertain that Azerbaijan has exerted pressure. Although Menendez had previously been accused of bribery, but the charges were not proven due to lack of evidence, and the charges were dropped. This is now the 2nd such allegation, with attempts to attack and harm his reputation.